And now, we will be having Portraits of Christmas with your host, Pastor Gerry Miller.
Hi, good day. Welcome to our interview with Professor Ambrosio Amo. He's a renowned art critic, and he's going to be giving us some insights relative to the paintings we're going to be considering as part of our message series here at New Hope Church for the Christmas series of 2010 called The Portraits of Christmas. Now, the purpose of this series is to help us understand how the artist's perspective in viewing a biblical event is oftentimes colored and sometimes even warped by his life experiences that he applies as he considers that event. And we're also going to be determining how our own personal events and perspectives warp our own view of the Scriptures as we study these in our own personal studies and Bible devotions. Well, anyway, with me here today is Professor Ambrosio Amo. Professor,
yes.
Welcome to New Hope Church.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, the first picture that we're going to be considering today is the Annunciation to Zechariah. This is done by an artist named Domenico Ghirlandaio.
It's Domenico.
Domenico, okay, Domenico,
Yeah.
you get that right. Now, who is Domenico Ghirlandaio? Tell me a little bit about him and his life perspective.
Actually, Domenico Ghirlandaio is Italian, like me. We're both
Okay.
Italian, but I don't know how to paint. He knows how to paint. I just Anyway, Domenico Ghirlandaio is one of the early Florentine painters. He lived in Florence, Italy, and in his time, he's one of the best painters around. This is the sort of thing that he always does. Kind of like religious images, painting for churches. I mean, he's done some really nasty stuff too, but, this is basically what he's been doing all his life. He actually used to make garlands, like a necklace. I think you call it in America necklace. That's why his name is Ghirlandaio. It's a garland in Italian.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the picture. I'm not an art critic, but as I look at this picture, there are a few things that just absolutely jump out at you. First of all, the people that are surrounding this event of Zechariah and the angel in the middle, doesn't seem like they're paying attention. Who are they, and what are they doing there?
Actually, they are not paying attention. Actually, those people are the people who commissioned Domenico Ghirlandaio to paint the painting. They're members of the Tornabuoni family, and you're going to see the guy on the right of the angel. That's Giovanni Tornabuoni. He's the one who paid for the painting. And then the people who are beside him are his employees and his family and his friends. So basically, they're there. It's ridiculous, but hey, we have commercial endorsers right now, like Britney Spears and all that.
Wow, okay, so he makes sure that those endorsers got into the picture.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting. Now, I've noticed this is an effect I've seen in a number of these Renaissance paintings. Over some of the spiritual characters in the picture, they have these, I call them the floating plate effect over their head. Explain to me exactly what the significance of that might be, and why is that used in so many of these paintings?
Actually, it's nothing, it's nothing artistic or anything like that. It's just to tell you that, hey, those are the holy people, and the others are,
okay.
They're mortals,
Mortals.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I got it. Okay, now, the other thing that really strikes me as I look at this painting is knowing what the temple looked like and the specifications of it as it's presented in the Bible, that this has nothing to do, or doesn't even look anything near like what the temple must have looked like when Zechariah was ministering before the Lord. Can you explain to me why Ghirlandaio painted this the way he did?
I know it's like it doesn't make sense, but back at that time, it was a period in Roman history called Quattrocento, and that's the time wherein Roman art was starting to revive the classical art of the Greeks and the Romans back then. Because the period before this is called the Gothic period. That's where, everyone looks elongated and, kind of stuff. They don't really look realistic. And so at this time, when, people are starting to, to make sense of, how realistic painting should be, they turn to the Greeks and the Roman sculptures and paintings and architecture. It looks more real. So that's why it's painted like this. It doesn't really look like Jerusalem's temple. I mean, it's not that grand, but, it was painted like that to reflect that basically at that time, if it looks Greek, if it looks Roman, it is beautiful.
Okay, kind of a 15th century depiction of the first century events. Well, that's interesting. Now, do you have any other insights regarding this picture that you'd like to comment on?
Actually, it's there's a lot with this painting that I can really comment on. Like, for example, look at their clothes. They're all wearing red. It's kind of weird, right? I mean, they're not a cheerleading team or anything like that. But basically, the red color back then symbolizes wealth. And if you're going to notice, the red costumes that they're wearing, they have like different forms too. Like some of them have bonnets and all that. That's basically the uniforms that they had in society back then. So if you're wearing red and you're wearing a certain uniform, you're holding a certain place in society. So, like for example, right now, when you see a doctor, of course, you would expect that the doctor would have a white lab coat or blue scrubs, and he would have a stethoscope around. So people would actually respect you when they see that you're wearing that. So it's also like the same thing back there. People respect them because they see that that's how they're dressed, and they know that the certain dress has a certain societal status attached to it. Also, it's also kind of interesting to note that the women are kneeling there, so it kind of tells you something. They're not in plane with men back then. Back then women have to be subservient. It's also part of the church's teaching back then, wherein I guess they referred it from the verse saying that women should submit to their husbands, but I guess they did it literally there. So that's the the prevailing viewpoint. Also, it's kind of interesting that in the Latin inscriptions at the top, you see some Latin inscriptions there.
Yes.
It's kind of weird. It doesn't say any Bible verses or anything like that. It just says in 1419, Florence was I'm just paraphrasing. I don't remember a lot of Latin phrases, but kind of says there that Florence is a great city. So there's kind of like a nationalism attached to that. It's kind of like, hey, I'm White Sox and I'm, in the painting itself. That's how it kind of says it.
So you're kind of telling us that really he's not even looking at it from a first century Jewish temple perspective, but rather from a 15th century church perspective.
No.
And what conclusions would you say, or what that he's trying to draw, or statements he's making about the church at that particular point in history?
Actually, at that time, it's believe it or not, but they believed that the church was very rich. That's what they believe. At that time, the church, which is basically one of the most powerful institutions at that time, was equated to a monarchy. So people were expecting that as the Pope is the king of the Christian world. So if he's a king, he should be rich. So that's why a lot of funds are like coming in from people, from offerings and indulgences to pay for their sins. That's why the church is rich. So the viewpoint at that time was that if the church is rich, then probably the temple should be rich. So it's like that. Looks like the Pantheon rather than the Jerusalem temple, which is kind of funny. But hey, what can you do? And then it's kind of weird too that those people, the Tornabonis, they're supposed to be there. I mean, they weren't even alive at that time. But it just kind of tells you that, money talks. It's like right now, you could put your face in a product if you pay too much on, for the producer to produce the commercial, and, even though you're not suited for it. I mean, these people are not really suited for a biblical story, but, they're there, What can you do?
Well, that is interesting. It kind of reminds me of a story once when Thomas Aquinas visited Rome, and he was there to see the Pope, and the Pope was in his room counting all sorts of money, and Thomas Aquinas was actually blown away by all the money, and then the Pope said to him, "Well, Thomas, no longer can the church say as Peter did, 'Gold and silver have I none.'" But I'll never forget Thomas Aquinas' reply, "And neither can the church say, 'Take thy bed, rise up and walk.'" Really quite a commentary on the lack of spirituality of the church at that time.
Yep.
And I suppose there are probably churches in our modern age who are similarly caught up in money as well, and that certainly is a commentary about Christianity, certainly in America. Do you have any other spiritual conclusions you'd like to draw from this particular painting here before we close our discussion on this particular item?
Actually, this painting is it's made as an altar piece, just to give you an information. So back at that time, the Tornabuoni family, kind of like was in charge of decorating the altar in their chapel. So this one is really more of like a decoration than kind of like, say, you use it for for praying or for worshiping or anything like that. But this painting is actually more for the people who ask Ghirlandaio to paint it rather than for the story itself. The story has to be there, but mostly it's for them. They have the better clothes. They have they distract from the painting. So it just kind of like tells you that sometimes people can be really full of themselves. They lose sight of whatever the Bible is saying. And it ends up they distract from the real purpose of of Christ and the church, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's human nature. What can you do?
Very interesting. It's true. Sometimes even people use the Bible to substantiate and to emphasize the fact that wealth is their birthright, and I think unfortunately that's an interpretation that's imposed on Scripture. Well, Professor Amo, thank you for your comments on Ghirlandaio's painting. And now, a word from our sponsor.